All right. This week we have Ella Mason with us. She is a PT, a gym owner, a mum. She's done studies in anthropology and Aboriginal studies at university in WA. She's also got a diploma in community development and drug and alcohol. She's done project management. She's also done her Cert 3 and 4 in fitness, and her level 1 and level 2 for weightlifting and strength and conditioning here in Australia. Again, Ella is a mum and a gym owner, so she's a little bit different to some of the people that we've had over the previous weeks. So she's got a few extra hats she's got to juggle, not just working in the industry, but also having kids and trying to run a gym makes for a very busy person.
Correct.
So here's Ella.
Hey, nice to talk to you.
Yes.
That was a good introduction.
So we're going to go through sort of your backstory, and obviously from the introduction here where the timeline sort of goes all over, well, not all over the place. It varies quite a bit. So I think it is a great story, and it is one I am very happy to know. So if you are quite happy to share your background and how you got to where you are at the moment, I'd love for people to hear it.
Yeah. Look, I'm always happy to. Talking about my story, my background, something that I've always been quite open with if people are interested. I've got quite a full and interesting life, and before I even ventured down looking at studying, I had already gone through a whole life of experience through my teens, from about 12 or 13 up until my early 20s, when I was arrested by the federal police in Australia because they'd been watching me under surveillance for 2 years. And that was due to, I'd had a very, very significant heroin addiction all through my teens. And then on top of that, I ended up working for the largest importers of heroin in WA in the 90s. And so that finally all came to a crashing halt when I was arrested by the federal police when I was 21. And obviously after that was a series of events over many, over about a year, where I finally stopped using heroin. I went to a rehab centre in New Zealand actually for 6 months with no intention of stopping, but that's what eventuated. So obviously, in hindsight, I was really lucky because I learned some really important skills in looking after my mental health and well-being, and I had a really good understanding of self from quite a young age because I was forced to.
Yeah.
And in many respects, I've always been grateful, although some really shitty things happened, and I did some really horrible things during that time. I see it that in many ways I was really lucky to have been pushed into a situation where I had no choice but to really look at self and how I continue to look after myself through the rest of my life and how I continue to grow. And I think I was really lucky for that, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Even though it was such a horrible thing to have to go to. And look, I was very lucky because I've come out the other end. I mean, most people, when I tell them my story, are like, what? You know?
Yes.
So, but also it's given me a really good understanding of people.
Yes.
Which has been good. But yeah, so then from there, after I sort of, my life was leveling out a bit, I went and studied anthropology and studied at the School of Aboriginal Studies in WA. I'd always had a really strong interest in people. And really at that time, it just sort of resonated with me. And I think I did a year of it in person in WA, and then I ended up moving back to New Zealand and finishing the rest of it over there remotely. And then I kind of just faffed around in my 20s, to be honest, like worked in hospo, moved to Melbourne, I think in 2001, maybe, and went back to Perth for a little while and just didn't really know what I was doing, or had no interest or sort of really strong impulse to do anything in particular till I was probably about 25, and I ended up deciding to I ended up working for Big Day Out, and in the music industry. And then what happened off that was I ended up doing mentor programs in a couple of different places. One was a youth substance abuse rehab centre in Eltham. And I worked with young people there. And then I did the same thing with young people in housing services, young women that were homeless in Melbourne. And then that sort of embarked me on this journey of going into working in the youth sector, mostly in crisis areas, so drug and alcohol, the homelessness sector. And then I went into general youth services, so working with young people in a more general sense. So, and in the midst of that, I think my first Dash, my eldest, was born in 2000. Oh my God, I can't remember his birth year. 2011, which you know.
Yes.
And I think at that time, and that's when I really, because I've always played sports through my life. Before I really went off the rails, when I was a teenager, I played for. I was one of the youngest players to play for WA cricket team.
Yep.
I was only 14, I think. The rest of the players were like, probably, I guess they were in their early 20s at that time. And I played tennis quite seriously. So I've always been big into sport. It's always been a big part of my life, and always enjoyed it. And I think it was around that time, when just after Dash was born, I was like just really craving moving and learning some kind of new movement. And I ended up in training with this guy actually in North Melbourne who was an competitive gymnast. And I actually just really wanted to learn gymnastics because I've always just found it just such an incredible sport. And it was when I was there, he said, oh, you should try Olympic weightlifting. So I tried that with him. And then concurrently, I ended up I heard about this, like, I don't know what it was, but this fitness session that was run at Collingwood running track, a couple of mornings a week at like 6 a.m. And I went one morning and it was me and then all of these like super burly dudes who are like cops and SAS and army and stuff. And it was Pete who was running it. And this was before CrossFit or anything was really taking off, I guess, in Australia. And I did some horrendous workout, which I actually enjoyed. And yeah, that was that. So I really got into just moving my body. And I think it was a really good way, because I think probably Dash was around 6-7 months. It was a really good way of just me reconnecting with my body, and doing something for myself, right? Which is super important, because with kids, we lose ourselves, and rightly so, because they need us to. But also it was important for me to connect with myself as well, because I felt that was in turn better for Dash ultimately. So and so that's how that all eventuated. And then I had our daughter was born in 2014, and as you know, it was like a horrendous, difficult time because she was born with a lifelong medical condition and was in and out of hospital for quite a while. And that time just completely knocked me, like in a way that I haven't really been knocked before, which seems so crazy because I've gone through some pretty crazy life events, but it really knocked me. And And then my partner and I separated with Remy was quite young. Remy's medical condition meant that things weren't always stable. And I just felt really lost, to be honest. And it took me a good, a few years to recover from that, I reckon. Yeah. And that was concurrently to obviously parenting still and single parenting then, and then working full time. Obviously there's all this, I'm like cutting so much of the story out, but and then I think it was around 2000, I can't even, my timelines are so askew. It was about 2017.
Yeah.
I'd done my PT, I've done my certification in fitness. I started doing some other additional learning in strength and conditioning originally when I was working full time. And I wasn't coaching, and I wasn't really training myself either, actually. And about 2017, I'd been working full time at the same place for a while, and things weren't. It was in a government position, and things weren't. For me, didn't align with my values and how I saw delivering for the community should be. And I decided to just stop. I just stopped working. I quit in, I think it was February of 2017, and I stopped working, and I took a whole year and a half off. I just stopped working. And I reckon I spent the first 6 months sleeping. I do not kid you. I would like get up, take the kids, like get the kids to where they're going, and I'd come home and I'd have a nap, and then I might do something little, and then I'd have a nap. And it was just like, I just slept for 6 months. And I think I just was like finally just stopping and recovering from everything that happened in the last few years. Until finally, a year and a half later, we were living in this property where we had this, it was an Italian mansion. And like every good Italian mansion, under the house it had its second kitchen where, you made your passata and blah, blah, blah. And then it had a separate, very well built brick garage with immaculate cement floors. And I just was like, I don't know. I literally cannot tell you how it even came to me. And by this time I'd already gone back and started training in Olympic lifting again.
Yeah.
And then decided I was going to start competing in that. And went to the World Masters in 2018. And yes. It was after that, I just was like, you know what? I think I'm going to start a gym. I'm going to start a gym, and it's going to be for people that like find gyms really hard to go to. They just do not feel comfortable in gyms for whatever reason, whether they've had a bad experience or they feel that it's not for them. And I hadn't been working, so I had no money. So I just, we built this gym in the garage, and I was like, maybe a few people come, And then people started coming, and this was in January of 2019, and heading into June, July of 2019, I was like, winter's coming, things look quiet enough. I probably should look for a job. And then things started getting busier, and I was like, oh shit, I better look for a new space. And so yeah, by the end of, I think it was about December, October, November, I started looking for a space for the gym, bigger space, and then signed a lease on the place where it's now situated in December of 2019. And then spent months renovating it, and then was due to open the day of the lockdown.
Just what you need.
Yeah.
What a way to open your gym.
Totally. Oh my God. God. Anyway, you've got to laugh, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. But you can only plan for so much. No one was expecting.
I mean, who expects the pandemic? I mean, like some of the experts actually did, but not many. Yeah.
How many of them expected us to be completely locked down for, coming up to nearly 8 months?
Yeah. It's kind of unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know for me, I worked 5 days when we were able to go back, and that was it. We were locked down again because we were in Airport
Oh,
West, which was
yeah,
one of the areas that the
hotspot.
government deemed was a hotspot, and that was it. Like, done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, which of course is tough. Like, you know,
It is.
5 days working, that's it, done. You're not allowed to work again for the next, it's coming up to 8 weeks by the time this first lockdown ends, and we'll see how it goes from there. But obviously, I don't want to get too caught up on that. But what I want to talk about is, obviously, you said business was going well, and that's why you
Yeah.
signed the lease and all that sort of stuff. How is business now? Have you transitioned to online training? Are you?
I've done a bit of, yeah, I do a little bit of online, like, I've just done one online class a week this time round. I did a couple more the last lockdown, just because I think people have a lot of just screen fatigue, basically.
Yeah.
And so, and for myself as well. So I do one on a Saturday morning, and then I have a lot of people on remote programming at the moment. Luckily, I had remote programming set up anyway before this even came about. Like, I trained someone in Perth and I trained someone in New South Wales, and there was other people that just wanted to do stuff from home. So I had that set up anyway. So I was lucky in that respect because that was ready to go and I felt comfortable to do that. And then apart from that, I mean, the community and community projects are a huge part of the gym anyway. So I've been able to look at just doing some other stuff that I feel really passionate about. We did a huge fundraiser. Where are we at? Last month, to raise funds for 2 different organisations, and we raised, I don't know, I think just over $3,000. Which was really good. So, and then I've got another project on the boil now to start something that I wanted to organise anyway, which is going to be an ongoing community fund that runs through the gym that people that can access that really need it.
Yeah.
So in that way, and I learnt this, I think, when I took that year off work, that time is sometimes having space in relation to not doing that grind, that 9 to 5 grind, or the routines that we have, gives way to 2 things. It gives way to highly uncomfortable feelings because we've got lots of time and space on our hand and all these emotions and things that we usually we can distract ourselves from. So you can have that experience, which is normal and fine. And then also, I always feel like it makes space for me anyway, for being creative in other ways. And that's quite important to me, to be able to have space to be creative in some way too. But obviously still working within the community, which is obviously something I've always been passionate about because I've always been drawn to working with people. So I've been, I guess I'm grateful in that respect to have space to do that stuff at the moment.
And I think that's for a lot of people in the industry, they are really attached to working with people. And, our whole industry is built off, face-to-face interactions and, connecting with people. And yes, people are connecting over the screen, but there's still a barrier. Whereas when you're face to face with someone, there's no barriers. They can't hide, and it's
a totally different experience. Yeah.
And it is very tough for people like us who do thrive in that sort of environment, to be told that you cannot do what you enjoy doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is hard, and I've had like my definite ups and downs with it. Some days I'm like, well, I mean, mostly I'm like, it is what it is, and it's we have to do it for the right reasons. But yeah, it's tough, right? It's like, I want to be working with people. I want to be coaching. Coaching online's not the same for me. I like being in person. I like having conversations. I like giving people a hug,
Yeah.
you know, like, um, so yeah, it is it's a difficult experience to go through, I think. And because you don't have control over it, it's different from me saying to myself, oh, well, I'm going to take a year and a half off work, to then being told you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes a big difference when I think that's the thing that people have lost is feel they've lost is that control
Yeah.
over their life. And that's a big thing, that you actually still have quite a lot of control over your life. It's for me, most of this control is in your head. And
Yep.
if you're focused so much on other things that you can't control, then that's where it feels like you've got no control.
I totally agree with you. And like, you know, obviously to put in perspective, we're incredibly lucky in the country we're in. Like so many other countries are experiencing this in a way where they really do have nothing. Like they don't have, you know, so, I mean, we're so lucky. We actually get paid to stay at home, most of us.
Yeah.
Whether it's JobKeeper or your employer or whatever, or, you know, some payment, right? Like it's not ideal, but it's something. But I do think, you know, it is about that. And I think that's what I mean around when you suddenly stop, there's going to be uncomfortability in that, because there's no hiding from the feelings and those things that come up and the lifetime of experiences we have and stuff we haven't dealt with. And I think if you can just sit with that and let those emotions pass through you, rather than resisting them or saying it's this person's fault, it's that fault, or if this was different, it would go away. There's a lot to gain from sitting with it and sort of working through those feelings.
Yeah, going through the process of, you know, processing those feelings is
Totally.
a big thing. And I think a big thing that I'm getting out of this and what I've seen is everyone was so busy rushing that they weren't actually dealing with what they needed to deal with. And now all those things are coming home to roost, and they're not happy about, they can't avoid them anymore. They're right there in front of their faces, and it's very hard to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I can relate to that and empathize with that for sure. It's not easy. I think one thing that I'm slowly trying to or I'm slowly starting to feel, just as I'm probably getting closer to the end, if that's a thing, is that, like, at first, I mean, like, not to say it's not still doing my head in, but homeschooling has been doing my head in. But I'm actually just trying to get into that headspace of going, you know what? Like, I'm so lucky to have this time with my kids. Like, we made a bloody stupid Hot Wheels track out on the front verge, and like we go for walks and we're going in the creek, and I get to like see more of them. And it's like, you know, like I have to be grateful for that. And I'm like trying to keep that in my head, because once everything starts up again, that's it. We're going to be at work, they're going to be at school, we'll see each other for maybe 2 hours in the evening, and have, you know, like once it starts up again, that's it. We're back into that grind where we just get fleeting moments of each other. And so having this time with my kids, I'm trying to just enjoy it.
And I think that is one thing, that there is moments throughout the day where you've, and I've felt this a lot, is you've got to check yourself and say, you're in an actually a really good place where you're looking at your kid, you're spending so much time at an integral part of their development. You know, it is great. So take that moment. There's going to be a moment that makes you laugh. There's going to be a moment where you're frustrated, but you've got to try and capture those moments and realize that it is actually a really good time.
Absolutely. And I think as well, like it's okay just to go, well, today I'm just having a really difficult day. And if that means I've done this, and if that means we're not doing school today and they're watching some extra TV and maybe we go for a walk, then that's it. Like, who cares? Right? Like they don't care, and they're not gonna like miss out anything. And it's just like, like it's not realistic to think that we're going to be doing our best and being positive and like in the best frame of mind every day. That's just not realistic. And so I think to go easy on ourselves is super important, because there's like oh my God, there's like so much guilt that comes along with parenting anyway. It's like, you got to go easy. Like, you really have to go easy, because being a parent is like, and guilt are like intertwined quite well.
Yeah, they don't tell you, they don't give you a really good instruction manual when they kids.
No, they do not. No, we're all learning. We're all learning as we go, right?
Yeah, that's it, and it keeps changing.
Yeah,
every day, and it's
sure does. Yeah.
I want to sort of talk about your philosophy on training, and how it's how you've developed your philosophy on training. Obviously, looking at weightlifting and strength and conditioning sort of stuff seems to be where you're really focused.
Yeah.
So what is your philosophy on training and how you train people?
Yeah, look, my philosophy has changed so much, and now I feel like I've found what it is for me, and I do. I really I guess towards now, like working with what our bodies are telling us, and looking at a longevity of training, so that we can train for our whole lives, not just for a short time, right? So we can prevent injuries and strengthen our joints and have good mobility and all those things, so we can be training right through our life, because that's what we want, right? We want to be old people and be able to get off our own toilet and lift stuff and have good balance and all of that kind of stuff. In the gym, I work with a lot of people that have never been in the gym space before. Would look at something like Olympic weightlifting, because we do Olympic weightlifting as well, and go, oh, well, I can't do that. Like, that's not for me. I have a lot of people that have never spent time in gyms, who, because of how their body looks, because of gym culture or fitness culture, and all sorts of reasons. And I really just, my philosophy is that moving your body, which is what I like to think about, is for anyone, and anyone should feel comfortable to do it, and anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. Anyone can Olympic weightlift with the right coaching. Anyone can do strength and conditioning. Anyone can like do any movement within their own physical means, obviously. I'm much less about thrashing people's bodies. It's not how I approach coaching or programming. I just want people's bodies to be moving well. I want them to be able to move their joints in the way they're supposed to be moved. And once they can do that, then they can start getting stronger, because they can move their joints in the way that they want to be moved. I want people to feel excited about doing something like Olympic weightlifting or something like that, not necessarily to compete, but just because, it's a really good way to learn, build strength or learn balance or exercise the brain. But also I want people to be able to do something like Olympic weightlifting and go, you know what, actually I can compete too. Where the gym's a fat positive gym, I have no interest in changing people's body shape. My philosophy around that is that if we do good things and move our bodies, other good habits will often want to follow, whether that's sleeping more or getting the rest that you need, or the recovery that you need, or getting the nutrition you need. But also actually just reframing that actually there's no one body type. Like, that's not realistic. Like, there just isn't. It's not,
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Like, bodies are all different, and you can be a larger body person and be incredibly fit and incredibly strong. So changing the narrative around that stuff's quite important.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that comes into play. We have a lot of transgender clients that come to the gym. And there's a lot of advocacy work I'd like to do around in obviously the Olympic weightlifting circles in relation to transgender athletes competing. There's a lot of changes that are still to be made. I mean, seeing today even that Caster Semenya has appeal with her competing in the Olympics again has been rejected. It just makes me absolutely livid. I don't know. Like, I see fitness the same way that I see the arts. The arts have always been a space to drive political change, and sport is the same. Sport has always been an area to drive political change, right? Whether it's like we have the first Black people being able to compete, we have women being able to compete, we have like transgender being able to compete. Like, it's an area that can create some really positive change. And I'd like to see that change happening across the fitness industry too, because it's become this like, and I'm speaking generally as a whole, right? Yeah. The fitness industry as a concept is being, it's money making, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not actually really thinking about, well, it can have massive positive effects on individual or community, or to create change or to drive change, or for good rather than for monetary gain. So yeah, look, I obviously have very strong opinions and values, and that's always driven me through my life, and it's really no different in how I approach coaching and how I run the gym. And it has to be fun. If it's not fun, don't do it. Oh my God, no. You know, like, it's like, and not, of course, training's not fun every day. It's like even days where I'm like, I don't want to train, but there has to be something in it. There has to be something in it's fun. It could be just as simple as you come into the gym and you get to hang out with some people that you really love, and do a couple of things, have a roll and leave, right? Yeah. Just because you just want to go in and connect. And then I think I'm the same with you in this way, is that I just feel like it's really important that people get good coaching too. Yes. That people get good coaching, and are learning things correctly. Like, I feel that everyone deserves that.
Yeah. I think you're definitely on the right track, like, as far as I'm concerned. If you can't move your own body well, putting weight, so like an external load on it, is not a great idea. Like, it's a recipe for disaster. Jamming someone under a squat, under a bar to try and teach them how to squat. If you can't move your own body to do an air squat, don't load up a squat. Like,
totally.
It's, if you can't move yourself, trying to move external things is not a great way to benefit people. Yeah,
100%. It's like, like, it's great to be able to squat 100 kilos or your body weight or whatever it might be. But also just being able to move your body without any weight into a proper squat position is good, right? Because really we just want our bodies to be working really well and at their best all through our life.
Yeah.
And I just rather see someone do something technically, as technically best they can, than lift something really, really heavy and it looks absolutely awful and like scary, right? Because you're like, oh my God, they're going to hurt themselves really badly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, like you said, that it's the coaching element of it. and it's up to us as coaches to pull people up too, like, you know, because I know from working in the gym for the last 10 years that people's ego starts to get hold of them, and they want to get the weight up, and they'll sacrifice everything to just push the number rather than just do it properly. Like, the more you do it properly, the less likely you are to get injured and all that sort of stuff. And
I've found that a huge part, actually, and one of the hardest things, and it's actually what I do like about Olympic weightlifting in some ways, is it is hard to slow people down.
Yeah.
And yes, and it's that ego that comes into play, or seeing someone else squatting more than you and you're like, oh, well, I want to be doing that, right? Or also it's their past experience of training, and that you need to feel like you totally trashed yourself to be benefiting yourself, which isn't true. And it's kind of what I like about Olympic weightlifting in a way is you've got no choice but to slow down, because that weight ain't going to go up until that technique, like, there's going to be a point where that weight just won't go up anymore because your technique's not there, right? And I do like that about Olympic weightlifting. It's like so highly frustrating, but it's good because it's you need to be technically proficient to be lifting, increasing your weight.
But even on that, you need to be strong in good positions, which means you need to have practiced. You might, like a simple movement like a snatch grip deadlift. Most people can't even get themselves into that position.
So
you can't get into that, like that snatch grip deadlift position. It doesn't matter what you do, like,
because you can't pull it off the floor.
You can't pull it off the floor. Like,
yeah.
So it's working that, yes, there's a lot of mobility required to successfully do a lot of those Olympic lifts, but it's something that I think people will skip that because it's like, well, that's too hard, and you're like, well, like, I know from experience, when I first walked into a CrossFit gym, I could barely break parallel on a squat.
Yeah.
It took 9 months of like super solid Olympic weightlifting training and mobility and all that sort of stuff to get below parallel and still be able to maintain like a really good posture in the bottom of that squat. And I still work on it now, 8 years later. It's not something that is going to just, you get it once and it stays with you. You've got to keep working at it.
100%. And I think you would feel the same. Is like, I am still like, where, you and I are still always learning as coaches. And I'm learning also within myself. I'm in my 40s now, and I'm having to relearn, especially in the last 6 months, what's best for my body now. Like, what is the right amount of volume for me? How much extra mobility do I need to be doing? And all of those things, because my body's changing and the hormones change, and I'm having to revisit again, like, what's the right balance?
Yeah.
And that goes across the board with anyone training, right? Is like, you can get away with it in your 20s a little bit more. You can go for it. But yeah, finding that right balance of like getting my mobility in, making sure things are moving properly, like going back is like, am I in a squat position and I can get into a full squat position, no worries, but am I driving off more with one leg? Is that glute activating more than the other glute? Do I need to look at some activation work for one side and all of that side? So it is a constant revisit of your body, and that's different for everyone.
And a big one I really think people don't work enough on is their hinge position. A lot of people really delve into their squat position, but what they don't focus on is their hinge position. So they feel like they're in a good position, and you're like, no, your back is terrible. It's rounded out. your knees are touching, you need to be solid. Like you need to straighten up more. Maybe you're not deadlifting from the floor yet. Maybe you're you're just doing rack pulls where you can maintain that midline in a really good position, because your spine, you're going to look like a Stegosaurus Rex if you add any more weight to that bar, because your discs are going to shoot through your spine. So
I mean, I'm sure you've had the experience of walking into like some gyms to, I've just gone to train at some Globo gym sometimes, and I'm like looking at people like, stop.
Yeah, but it's that ego thing of like, people will sacrifice everything to move the weight, and you're just like, well, if you look at any top lifter at any level, whether it's Olympic lifting, powerlifting, you name it, any of those, strength sports, they don't sacrifice everything to get the weight up. Like it's
no, because they know as well technique is what's going to eventually build good strength and continue for that weight to go up. But also, and as well, like any elite athlete in any of the sports is still always training with really light weights. Yeah. No one's lifting it like 80, 90, 100% all the time.
No. Yeah. And it is that big thing of you can't max out all the time, because your central nervous system will hate you.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then people, like, all these other things start happening, and it is. It's difficult. I've found it difficult slowing people down. But what I've always, and I think is important is like the people that resonate with how you coach, and it makes sense to them will stay. And if it doesn't, they won't, and that's fine, because that's how it goes. Like, and that makes sense to me. It's like some teachers are going to be the best teacher for your learning, because it resonates with you, and then others aren't, and that's fine. That's totally fine.
Yeah, and it's a very fine balance with you're trying to find in coaching people, because you still want them to achieve something, but like you said, sometimes you actually got to spend most of your time pulling the reins back to stop them.
I think it's really interesting, and something I'm starting to think a lot more about is that there's so much more to coaching than just that the biomechanics and the physiology of people. Understanding is that movement and our bodies are all tied into emotions, trauma, and all of these other things. And sometimes what's stopping a person, and literally stopping physically or mentally, is that stuff. And that takes building a relationship with someone, and then actually a really good intuitive understanding of what might be going on for that person. And I know for myself, like if I go into a gym and I experience a coach that's suddenly shouting at me, like, pick up that weight, it's like, that's it. I'm like, I don't want to train with you. That doesn't motivate me at all. And it you have to, there is no one fit for coaching people. Everyone that comes into your gym is going to need a different temperament, a different approach, a different level of patience. Some people like to be pushed, some people don't. Some people find that traumatic. Some people might start crying when they're doing some movement. Some people might fucking get angry at you. I've had that, and it's like, that's okay, because they're feeling something, and they're feeling probably something that's attached to something completely different. That takes a level of skill that either you have or you learn over a longer period of time, I think.
And yes, I think that's I'm not I don't respond well to when people, like, when we're doing workouts and stuff, people yelling and screaming in my face, I shut down and shut off, and I'll purposely resist what they're saying and probably go slower than. But it's having that. But it's having, as a coach, you need to meet people with where they're at, and it is like you said, it is an art form. It is very easily, very easy to get caught in that, scream and shout and bash, thump your chest sort of mentality. But that doesn't work for everyone. It might work for a few people, but you're also now limiting the number of people you can work with and possibly help. And I know from experience, and as you do, there's some coaches just don't get it. Doesn't matter how long they've been in the industry.
Totally.
Yeah,
and that's, that probably comes back to their own learning as well, and or lack of learning and evolving. But I think you and I have both experienced that. So it's a shame, but then it comes back to, well, people either stay or they'll leave.
Yeah. Let's move things up a bit on my timeline here, because we've gone over most of this stuff already, and so I don't have to ask a lot of these questions. It's been really good, free flowing. I quite enjoyed this. Something that you you've learned from training or in the gym that you take with you and use in everyday life.
It's a really good question. I think for me, and this is actually something I'm still probably only just really mastering now, is actually really listening to my body and emotionally where I'm at on any given day. Sometimes I can go in to train, and I train remotely, like all my coaching's done online. I don't have a coach there. I often train on my own, as I think most coaches, generally do, just because of how it fits in with work. And I could go in on a day and have a really good day and feel really good. And then I could go in and just be like, you know what, I don't have it in me. And rather than going, push through, like, you've got to do it, and getting all these like feelings of like guilt around it, I've just gone, you know what, today, so what, I'm just going to drop it down to 50%, work at 50%, or I'm going to just reduce those sets for the day, or actually I'm just going to go in and do some other stuff, do something fun, do some mobility work, or I might just stay home and have a sleep because I just want to have a sleep. And I think that's something I'm getting better with in life as well, is like, I've always been quite an impulsive person, and that can work in my favor because I don't really experience fear per se. Like, I can be like, I'm going to do this now, and not have a million thoughts on like, oh, but you've never done that before, or you shouldn't do that, or that's going to send you broke, or anything. So that's been really good for me. But at the same time, having some impulse control is actually really good too. So I think that's something that I would take, that I've started to really incorporate into my training, but actually into my life as well, is that on any given day, you're going to feel different, and you've just got to adjust yourself according to that. It's the same as like when you're going in to coach people, and coaching people requires a lot of energy, not from a physical sense per se, but from that emotional sense, because you've got to be really present, right?
Yes.
But also you've got to be mindful of what energy you have to give, because you've still got to go home, and you've got to be with your partner, and you've got your kids and all that kind of stuff. And so it's actually being, how do I regulate that energy for myself but still give it to someone? And I think that kind of balance takes look, I'm still learning, basically.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot better, but I'm getting a lot better. And I think that's something that I definitely translates both in my training and everyday life now for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I like asking that question at the end, because I think there's more to there's more to being in the gym and going to the gym than people. Well, not all people, but there's a few people who don't realize how much benefit being in the gym and working out benefits your everyday life, not just in the health sense, but learning how to be you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. It's such a good question, and it really does remind me of something I read today on the Instagram. Actually, it was a gym in America had posted it, and it's something that we talked about, and I feel very strongly about. And it talked about that emotion is linked to motion. So emotion is literally linked to movement, right? And we already know, because there's so much data around how important movement and moving our bodies is to mental health. But like, it literally is. It's like emotion. I don't know. I was reading, it derived from the Latin word to move through.
Yeah.
And when we're moving our body, we're allowing these things to move through us, consciously or not. And that's why people literally, like, love coming in, right? Especially when they've got the community, because they feel better, they feel connected, or they feel they're able to process stuff through movement rather than always talking. And that's a really, I don't know, it's a super liberating experience, I think. Like, I train for my mental health because when I'm moving, I feel better, I feel relaxed, I feel free, I'm not really thinking about much, so yeah.
I know from speaking to people who are notorious overthinkers and analyzers, when they're in the gym and they're training, they block everything else out. So their brain's not going at 100 miles an hour. They're focused on what they're doing. Because if you're not focused on what you're doing, you know that you're not going to get the result that you want. Whatever the result is. So being absolutely present in the gym is a big part of, like you said, that motion. It stops that overthinking. They're focused on whether they're on the treadmill running there, and they're focused about, shit, I've got to remember to breathe. And that's the thing that goes through their head. So now they're only thinking one thing instead of what happened to I spoke to my boss today. He said this, blah, blah. And that narrative where you're trying to go through a million things at once, that stopped because you're like, shit, I just need to breathe.
Yeah, and right? It's like, it's why learning good, those lessons from the start, like good intra-abdominal breathing and bracing and all those things are really good things to learn early on, because as soon as we're doing that stuff and we're present, then those lifts are going to happen more easily, because we're not thinking about all this other stuff, or we're not even thinking, we're not going to be able to do it, and all this other stuff. And it definitely helps with training. And I think it's the same, and I'm sure you've had this experience of like, where you'll have people come into the gym and they start coaching themselves while you're coaching them. And I'm always like, it's always a good gentle reminder to be like, you know what, you don't have to do that, because I am here for you and I'm paid, like I'm literally paid to be here to coach you too, and you get to just shut off and let me do that for you and take that load for you.
And that's it's great that you've seen that element of people who talk themselves through. Doesn't matter what they're doing, they talk themselves through every step of the way, and you're sitting like, what are you doing? Like, just chill out. That's my job. If you're doing something wrong, or if it's right, I will say congratulations. If it's not, I'll just give you a few pointers to work on. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I think that's going to do us for today. it's been great talking with you, Ella. I really enjoyed this interview. Lots of fun. And we covered everything I wanted to without having to directly ask questions, which is really quite good. So thank you for being so open and honest about being Ella.
Thank you so much, Brad. I had a really nice chat. It's been really nice to see your face again too.
Yes. All right. Thanks very much.